I went through the metal detector, right? Damn it, this guy, we got to get him out of here, man. He's causing a crisis. You made it with Ebola. I'd walk through there and I'd say, if I go fly in the next few months, I'd say, here's a set of questions. We want to drive them crazy. I said, where's your biohazard level 4 suit? Do you realize that you're exposed to baggage and people walking through here that could be carrying the virus? And 3 to 4 viral particles can make you get Ebola. Do you know 3 or 4 that actually attach to your cell receptor binding domain in your airways or break in your skin, your hands, or your eyes or nose? 3 to 4 particles, and you got it. And 71% case fatality rate. This guy Duncan, when he died, I'm sure they thought, oh, the best of Western medicine. He's coming from Liberia. He's going to make it. Bullcrap. ZMAP, which is the only thing that might help right now in the medical community, which is a monoclonal antibody. If you don't give it early enough, you're going to have a cytokine storm. It's too damn late because you've got a disseminated intravascular coagulopathy, and literally the lungs, the blood vessels, the heart, and everything are liquefying. You ever seen liquefied organs? It looks like something out of a B movie. So I got to tell people,
what it does.
And see, the thing is, it's not secondary. I've actually been there when I've seen these things happen. So when people say, "Oh no, Dr. Deagle, you're just blowing smoke," no, I'm not. I am highly qualified to make these statements. They're not taking it seriously enough. But by the way, if my 12-point recommendations I gave, which includes personal protection, including our flu and viral defense kits, etc., hazmat in every aircraft, in the back of the aircraft, all these other points I made, if we don't institute that, this will chomp on us. And if it doesn't get us right away, it'll take about, my guess, at the worst, at the best scenario, in the worst scenario, we're going to get hot cases every week, immediately. In the best scenario, it's going to hit us in 6 months to a year. Either way, we're screwed. If we don't put these scenario actions into plan right now, we're done. You mentioned this morning to me that we have new data that suggests that there's a big problem with unit number 4 with the spent fuel pool area, that we have more evidence that the reactor number 2 had a much bigger release of radiation than we ever suspected initially. And then here back at home, and of course it continues to be put out by the Asahi Shimbun paper. They had to retract information, which is obviously true, because the Japanese government are basically a totalitarian regime. They don't believe in freedom of speech at all. They consider it an attack on the state, to tell the truth. And then, of course, the more tank farms with highly radioactive water around Fukushima Daiichi. They've got a giant typhoon, probably the biggest typhoon of 2014, heading directly toward Japan, the worst thing they possibly need. Let's go through this, and also the latest, of course, the Hanford Project. What's going on there? We've known this one for decades. I talked to experts 20 years ago about how bad Hanford is. The whole area is saturated, and it's extremely close to the Columbia River. People don't realize that river should have been diverted years ago with Hanford in the mess it's in. We've got a big problem, haven't we?
We have a big problem, absolutely. I mean, let's just start with Fukushima Unit 4. And I do want you both to continue on with the very, very frightening Ebola discussion also. But also Unit 4, remember they stopped moving fuel in Unit 4 for several months, and they've resumed it, except now they're crawling along. And we believe that they're running into damaged fuel, and it's not the easiest thing to remove in one shot.
Right.
So the low-lying fruit's gone. And now they're getting into the damaged fuel, which leads to a possible further release. Speedy was the system that
do they, Chris? Do they even have a proven technology for the removal of multiple damaged rods?
No.
Okay, I'm going to give you a shock to you both. Since we put the gamma radiation site here in Vista, we have the least radiation, by the way, of any of the detectors, both in Colorado and all the way through California, Oregon, Washington, up British Columbia to Quesnel, which is halfway up to BC interior. My detector, since yesterday, has been taken off, and it's now showing up cesium-137, 44 to 47. Ordinarily, it was running 28 to 32, and that was not present before. It's very, very consistent.
Shocking.
Right, that's shocking. It means it's selectively picking up cesium-137. Now, people say, oh, that's only in the West Coast. Get a life, okay? Most of this radiation is 26,000 to 30,000 feet. It's whipping over the Rocky Mountains. It's crossing and going down to the Midwest. It's shooting up to the Northeast. And when you have rain, which we don't have any rain, you're going to get a ton of that. We only get a little spiff of it, okay? But our detectors are extremely sensitive. Where it goes across to Europe, it also can go transpolar all the way over to Eastern Europe. That's why 2 years ago they had major releases of plutonium and so on that were detected in Eastern Europe, because they were, with the media not being suppressed because it's post-communist, they actually reported the truths. And as a result, they thought at first it was an old Chernobyl reactor that was breaking down. It turned out it was actually coming from Fukushima. So Fukushima is going to get a lot worse. These bioaccumulating isotopes are going to start showing up more and more in people. We had Dr. William Ray on the program about 3 weeks ago from the Environmental Health Center of Dallas. He's one of the founding members of our World Academy of Environmental Medicine, the top academy in the world. He's probably one of the prescient experts on radiation. He says we detect and measure radioisotopes in our patients that come in east or west of the Rockies. We're seeing a gradual increase in levels on everybody. What I see happening is people don't know that they're gradually getting poisoned with radioisotopes. And particularly long-acting ones, cesium and strontium. The first thing you want to do is have adequate levels of magnesium and potassium in your body so you won't absorb these things, because if you're deficient, you're going to absorb them like crazy. So taking, magnesium glycinate, malate, magnesium taurate, topical magnesium, extremely important to not absorb cesium and strontium. Really, really important. And make sure you have adequate levels of minerals in your bones. If you don't, you're going to absorb strontium like crazy. And here in North America, the JASCO report, before he was changed to the new director, nothing has been done to deal with the fact of 3 issues: station blackouts around reactors, extreme weather and rain. It can just be above the intake valves for the diesel turbines for backup power for these reactors. Cyber terrorism, really no public reports on that at all. And then finally, volcanism and earthquakes that can literally break the reactor core or the containment area or the turbines and other things that are working there. An actual structural analysis using X-ray of joints or ultrasounds and other things, and back engineering it through their computer simulations to see what kind of level of earthquake they can tolerate. None of this stuff is getting any fruit or any positive results. None. So all the reactors that are sitting, and basically half of our reactors in North America are sitting within strike distance of a major fault line zone like Diablo Canyon in California, New Madrid, which is a giant danger zone. Most of the eastern seaboard and the southeastern United States would become a radioactive dead zone that would make Fukushima look like a party. It would be considerably worse if they ever had a New Madrid superquake. We're just not ready for anything. And, that's a bad diagnosis, but we can do something about it. The first thing is we got to get out of conventional nuclear power that we have now. We need to move this nuclear material off-site to a safe place like the bottom of a tin mine or lead mine that's down way below the area where it can be affected by radiation or water tables. We need to have double-hulled ships that can be detected after we convert or classify the radioactive waste from Fukushima and these other plants. We don't even have Yucca Mountain. We have nothing. What we have is a bunch of politics that continues to be playing with, Russian roulette, and say, we play Russian roulette, we just not tell you they have 2 bullets in the gun, not 1. Bad idea to have 2 bullets in the gun, okay? So, what do you think, Chris? And then we have on top of that the incompetence of global government dealing with Ebola, dealing with the war in the Middle East, because the very first thing that will happen if a shooting war starts, even a minimal one, Strait of Hormuz is going to close, the world economy will crash, and pestilence, famine, which is already here, because the food supplies are affected by extreme climate shift. And we still have the idiots trying to push for carbon taxes. And they're saying global warming is caused by humans, which is BS. Methane hydrates released in the oceans are hundreds of times more greenhouse gas material, and of course the general trend already is toward an ice age, but it can shift. It can shift in 5 years or whatever, and all of a sudden you look like you're heading into an ice age, which is a natural Maunder cycle, and it can get hotter than Hades because you get so much methane hydrates, because there's something happening to the world climate and to volcanism and to methane hydrates that is global. And by the way, it's happening on other planets in our solar system, which means there's an object coming into our solar system that's affecting all of the planets at a distance. That's pretty significant, isn't it?
very significant. Yeah. Well, you know, you're right. Volcanism has been specifically exempted from some of the scenarios that we would plan for here in the United States because it's unlikely, but, you know, you can't really say that now because of what you just said also. So that it should be considered as something that we can plan for.
I got a question for you. What's the most volcanically active area on land in the planet? With more volcanoes than any other area. And you have to name the state. No, it's not. It's Oregon.
Oregon. Okay.
The biggest volcanoes are in Hawaii, but the most active number of volcanoes is in Oregon.
But the most dangerous is in Yellowstone.
No, that's not that dangerous, to be honest with you. It's an open caldera. Those likely will blow every 700,000 to 1.5 million years. The most likely ones that are going to be really dangerous are a different type of pyroclastic volcanoes like the ones in Iceland. And those will produce tremendous volumes of not only shards of microglass, but also fluoride. And the fluoride salts cause a dead zone of killing plants and animals and people for many, many miles. You know, the translation from Nordic was for some of the biggest ones that have blown in the last few hundred years. One that caused the actual famines across Europe several hundred years ago was called, and translated from Nordic was the gates of hell, or Hades, or Valhalla, the gates of Valhalla. Pretty appropriate. Back in a moment. Fukushima is irradiating us, and the radiation levels are jumping up and down. It's back down to 32 now, so we're getting waves of it coming in. So that's something new. And the big cyclone, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce it in Japanese, but I like to transliterate it of America and Europe, you're screwed of storm. And secondly, here in America, we don't face the music that volcanism and earthquakes are dramatically increasing. I mean, if you just actually Google on websites and say, well, DEAGLE raised this question, is it really increasing? Don't I take my word. Go research it yourself, and you'll see. Since, for example, whether it's artificial, which I believe it was, by the way, the tsunami that struck the Fukushima Daiichi was not a normal tsunami. It was actually triggered off with specific waves that indicated it was a artificially created tsunami. But since that time, there's a 500% increase in 5-level or greater earthquakes, and the magma chamber of the Mount Fuji is actually refilling. And when it blows every couple hundred years, it kills everybody within 75 to 120 miles. So it's bad. And people don't understand that the fault lines directly connect to Oi and the Fukushima Daiichi areas in northern Japan, which means a number of nuclear reactors are in grave danger of completely losing control, and we're going to have a lot more Fukushimas. But it's also here in America. I mean, back, was it 200 years ago, we had such a large earthquake that occurred in New Madrid that we actually created a 26-mile-long lake, and there's areas, if you go through Missouri, where you can see the...
Real fuel lake.
Right, and we also can see waves in the...
for several hours.
Right, and we can also see waves in the ground. We're actually, with the ground rock and so on, the actual earthquake waves are actually locked into the rocks in the ground. So you can see these giant waves are actually still locked in the ground. It's like, whoa, that's the largest earthquake. It wasn't in Alaska. It was in New Madrid. It's like, that's bad. And we know if these things are increasing, which they are, that's why Walmart is doing their research. Then on top of that, we've got what's going on in the Middle East. And Turkey, of course, is playing this triple game. And this is a report from New York Times. I want to get your opinion, Tim. They're saying they want the impossible. Ankara wants to fight Islamic State, which, by the way, they're also getting money because they're actually selling illegally oil from the Islamic State by taking over oil fields in Syria and Iraq. Did you know that? So Turkey's getting lots of money. Then they also are...
Turkey, there would be no ISIS.
Right. And I think it's something like up to 5,000 Turks have actually volunteered to fight in the ISI, in the Islamic State. Yet Turkey is saying they're going to attack them. But they're not going to stop this Kurdish town in northern Syria from being slaughtered to death. And American air support is like, you know, they actually put up a YouTube.
Well, I mean, Lana, think about this for a second. We've got F-14s, F-15s, F-22s, F-A-18s. We've got all this firepower. And basically, if you look at a satellite map of that, it's basically a village. It's not very big. And there are several hundred to a couple thousand ISIS fighters around that area. Now, we have the technology in place that we could be bombing them around the clock. And you know what? Unless there's